Hi, this is a summary of role conflict theory of stammering by Dr. Joseph Sheehan, a paper published in 1970 and shared very kindly by Dr. Amit Bajaj so that we in TISA can understand the psycho-sociological background to many activities which we routinely conduct in our self-help groups. To begin with, let us forget about muscle tension in the articulator's jaw and tongue or glitch in our brain, slow circuitry. Let's forget about all that and think of stammering in terms of social transactions and the roles we play. By roles, I do not mean dramatic roles of Shah Jahan or some hero or heroine on the screen, but regular normal things which we do. For example, if you are playing with your child, you are playing the role of a father. If you are making a presentation in your classroom, you are playing the role of a student. So that kind of role we are talking about. Dr. Sheehan has very aptly described stammering as a problem of social presentation of self. When we present ourselves in social context, then we face certain difficulties. What does he mean? It means that it relates to self, who I am, and what I think about myself. For example, many people stammer on self-referent words like my name is, they will have problems, or giving a roll call, I am present. So, so there is a huge element of self to which stammering difficulty relates to. And second is the role I play. So, for example, when I speak in a classroom where others are listening to me, I have a lot of difficulty. So, when I'm playing the role of a speaker, then a lot of stammering comes my way. So, so therefore, he's talking about self-presentation, presentation of self in social context. For example, secondary behaviors come on when I take up the speaker's role. I don't face them when I'm reading or listening or doing something else. Again, I don't stammer when I talk to myself. So we can see that stammering comes on when I'm trying to play the speaker's role, and again when it is being done in a social context, when there are other people who are in the room who are listening to me. And again, we all know that when we speak in a false accent or when we mimic someone else, when I'm taking off my boss, then I don't stammer. Again, when I'm doing a role play, I don't stammer. So when we take up a false role, stammering is no more there, or is reduced very much. So from social perspective, what is self? What do they mean by self? Self simply means self and what I think about myself. So for example, a stammerer may think about himself or herself. um, I'm a stammerer, uh, quite successful, or I am a stammerer, quite unlucky where jobs are concerned, or I am a stammerer whose company people don't much care for. These are the self-referential ideas which we have about ourselves. Next two ideas are position and the role. So position is given by society. In every tribe, in every group, there's somebody on the top, there's somebody at the bottom. In every group, there's a hierarchy. A hierarchy comes into existence in every group sooner or later, and the role is what we are expected to do in a certain position. When we occupy a certain position, what are we supposed to do and behave like? So self, position and role, these are the three terms which we'll be referring to frequently: self, myself, or the self of the person as he thinks about himself or herself, and the role which is given by the society or the group in which we happen to be. So Dr. Sheehan calls it self-role conflict. So there are two components: self, which is a variable, as I said just now, what we think about ourselves, and the role is the variable, which means how the audience is perceived by me as a student. So if I am playing the role of a student, then I'm sure I will have certain ideas about how my audience is looking at me, or is going to judge me or not judge me or appreciate me. So that is the role variable. So to give an example of self-role conflict, let me say, suppose I am a student, then my self is that of a person who stammers. My position is that of a student, and the role I am playing is I'm making a presentation in the classroom. So these two components, self and the role, they come into conflict because as a student, I am expected to give a good presentation without stammering. That is what I expect from myself, and myself is that of a person who stammers. Now, there is incomplete segregation of our role as a speaker, because I have got two roles to play which keep on merging and separating and again merging. One is stuttering self, stammering self, and fluent self. Because as we all know, I don't stammer all the time, and a lot of the times I enjoy fluency, and decidedly there are times when speaking is very difficult and I stammer a lot. So when I embrace my fluent self, I develop expectations of more fluency. I want to be even more fluent. I want that spell of fluency to continue forever. This is the role expectation. This is what I'm expecting in my role as a student who is making a presentation. But this expectation generates fear and anticipatory tightness and struggle, leading to stammering. Because when I'm enjoying this fluency, the predominant thought in my head is, what next? Which word am I going to stammer next? So that anticipation generates a anxiety, and that generates a struggle, tightness in my articulators. When we stammer and embrace the role of a stammering speaker, then the reverse happens. This generates a seesaw effect. We stammer, then speak fluently, then again stammer, and so on. So we all must have noticed this, that stammering and fluency keeps on alternating. We stammer on some words, the pressure comes off, we speak fluently for some time, some sentence, some words, and then again it builds up the anticipation that, okay, now I'm going to stammer, and then we actually stammer. And after stammering, we experience a kind of a release, and then we speak some words fluently. So like this cycle goes on. Dr. Sheehan calls it like alternating current. And if you look at this picture, you can understand the seesaw nature of our stammering and fluency. Look at this schematic diagram. There is approach and avoidance both for stammerer role and fluent role. We want to speak, and when the urge is greater than the fear of stammering, we speak. When our fear can't put us down, and the urge to speak is greater than our fear, then we speak. And if we speak fine, we hug that role, we enjoy the fluency, and we want to continue being fluent. But it also generates fear. What if I stammer on the next word? Then the fear leads to stammering, and this is how the cycle goes on By double approach and avoidance, double because we are playing double role of a PWS and a normal speaker. We alternate between these two poles. Now, there could be two ways out of it. Number one, at the normal pole, at the pole of normal speaker where we are enjoying momentary fluency, if we can wash away all ideas of stammering from our self-concept and have no consciousness of stammering, whether speaking or not, this path is available for young kids who have not yet developed stammering mindset. This is one solution, one path which is open to children because they have not yet developed this, this constant doubt. Will I be able to see the next word fluently or not? So if they can totally forget about stammering, and if they can just focus on, on just speaking and nothing more, then there's no struggle, no fear, and they can become a normal fluent speaker. And then the other road available uh, to adult stammerers is to become a PWS all the way. Become a stammerer all the way. Embrace it. You will stumble on words but without struggle, without shame and confusion. Your audience will have a little problem with it. Occasionally they may say, "Excuse me, what did you say?" But that happens even to normal speakers. I'm sure we all have seen that even the normal speakers are sometimes stopped and requested, "Can you please repeat the last word?" Interestingly, this happens when a PWS goes to a therapist. When he goes to a therapist, he's embracing the role of being a stammerer. And that is why in the clinic, he enjoys a lot of fluency. He doesn't stammer at all. So this is the second route out of the seesaw, where and which is quite relevant for adult stammerers, because our brain is already infected by a stammering bug. So this is this route where we embrace our stammering, we make up our mind to play the role of a stammerer wholeheartedly, without resistance, and that generates fluency because we are no more fighting against our own speech. Another important dimension of this theory is the relationship between self and the other. I, as a trainer at one time, was quite okay as a trainer conducting a session. But during the tea break, when I was interacting with participants on a one-to-one basis, I will have a lot of difficulty because the equation had changed. In the session just few minutes ago, I was talking to a group of students, but I was talking to them from a position of strength. I was the expert, I was the subject matter expert. I was the person leading the session and they were the students. So naturally I felt more empowered. But interacting with the same people on a one-to-one basis, where I would feel that I am at the same level as them, one to one, man to man, I will have a lot of difficulty. So relationship between self and the other is an important dimension. So, what can we do about it? Where our stammering comes on in those situations where we feel disempowered, where we feel that I am down below here and the audience, the person listening to me, has got all the power. So there are two ways. One thing is we can increase our self-esteem by preparing well for the presentations or the interview, by paying attention to our personal grooming, and by connecting with our deeper self through daily meditation. That can be a good source of self-esteem. And on the other hand, what we can do is to reduce the awesomeness of the audience. Stop believing that they are awesome, that, that they are all powerful. By reminding yourself frequently that they are just like you, they are just like me. They are here to learn something from me. They are not here to judge me. So that is how we can reframe the whole situation and gain more power in that equation. In this paper, Dr. Sheehan is also talking about stuttering iceberg, but he's talking about a very important dimension of this iceberg, and that is he's talking about shame and guilt. And he says that shame and guilt are like two sides of the same coin. Shame is a public phenomena. When we do something bad in public, we feel ashamed, and guilt is a personal phenomena below the water. So shame is above the water, and guilt is below the water. What he says is this, that you can recondition shame through openly stammering in public and reduce it. So, for example, if we continue going to the park and approaching strangers and doing a little voluntary stammering or gentle stammering with the help of bouncing or prolongation, that public shame can shrink. And when that shrinks, the guilt component also will come down in size. And what he says that that this shame component can be dealt with, unlike guilt. Guilt, being an internal phenomena, seems to have no end, no limit. If you've got certain amount of guilt, it can continue in your heart for years, and it can even grow in size. So one way of dealing with guilt is to push it up above the water, convert it into shame, and then deal with it publicly by doing all these various activities which we do in our self-help groups. So if stammering is self-role conflict, what should be the therapy like? So some of the ideas which I have derived from this paper is this, that therapy and self-help must incorporate elements of psychotherapy. It should teach us taking roles with more openness and willingness. In other words, our self-help group activities should help us to take up the role of a stammerer with more openness and willingness, which we often do in stranger talk or in stammering interviews. We do exactly the same thing when we make a stranger call and make up our mind to purposely stammer gently on hello or good morning. So these are the activities and exercises which help us to adopt the role of a stammerer more willingly, more openly, with less resistance. Because remember, it is the resistance which is creating the struggle and a lot of stammering. Again, when we are enjoying fluency temporarily, again we should embrace that role, because that also is myself. That also is one of my roles. So I should be able to accept that fluency and embrace it without this constant fear, what next? When am I going to stammer next? This can be done by conscious speech assignments, stranger talk, stammering interview. And finally, to quote one of his lines, prolonged role enactment with self-involvement results in changes in self-concept. Our concept can change if we do these speech assignments in our self-help group with more involvement, not just to pass the time or just going through the motions, but doing it more consciously, more willingly, and with more involvement.